You know, and it is you as their constituents who are the ones who need to remind them of that. You, let's say that together, you hold the lease on their office. I think it's really easy to go to a state capitol or go to Capitol Hill and forget that. You know, to vote like the party wants you to, vote like your friends want you to. Maybe not really thinking about what your constituents want you to do, or what you said you were going to do. You know, and whether you are maintaining that trust of those people who trusted you and voted for you. So always, always remind them of that. The House Freedom Caucus, let's talk about them for a moment. The vast majority of candidates for Congress endorsed this election cycle in either the primary or the general by FreedomWorks for America were members of the House Freedom Caucus. This group of men and women are standing, nobody else is standing. There are a number of them who eat alone in the congressional cafeteria because the other Republicans will not be seen seated within the cafeteria. Congressman Mark Meadows from North Carolina. You know, most of you have heard of him. You've heard that name. I mean, he was the one who filed the original petition to fire John Weds. Not a popular thing to do on Capitol Hill. But what he told the people of his district that he would do if they sent him to Capitol Hill, and he did. He has very recently, 2 weeks ago, been elected as the new chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. FreedomWorks could not be more delighted with that choice, because he is one who is truly out there in the front, and he is one who is truly out there standing for what he said he was going to do when people put their trust in him in Washington. And that is just crucially important. He is one who his constituents don't have to remind that he is in the minority. So we do a lot of supporting of the House Freedom Caucus. We did endorse a number of candidates who are not caucus members because they are not yet elected, but who we were confident would, if elected, immediately join and stand with the members of the House Freedom Caucus. And we did pick up a few of those seats, which means that our numbers should improve in the caucus in the new session. So we're very excited about that. The Freedom Caucus has clearly shown that they are making a difference in Washington. You know, we are at the point now that the Speaker will call House Freedom Caucus leadership in about a bill that's going to be closed, and they're like, okay, how is the caucus going to vote on this? This is a very new moment, and this shows power. This shows that these people are standing and are noticed. You know, they're being noticed, and they truly are making a difference. And the more, you know, the more of them there are, obviously the more of a difference they're going to make. And so we're really excited about that. A few other things that you're going to hear and see from FreedomWorks in the coming months. The election didn't go quite as we originally thought that it would go. Thank goodness. You know, I think about 3 days prior to the election, we began this thing might just go a little differently than we think most of America and most think it's going to. So what that meant is that, you know, we were scurrying and working really diligently and hard to come up with our congressional legislation, which I'm extremely excited about. Obviously, what we can accomplish under President Clinton, and what we can accomplish under President Trump, are just, the list is just extremely different. So just a couple of things that you're going to see us focusing on. Education policy. FreedomWorks believes in school choice in every possible capacity. FreedomWorks is opposed to Common Core curriculum and has been from the very beginning. We are encouraged by some of the choices we're seeing President-elect Trump make in the area of education reform at the federal level. And we also intend to work against Common Core in many state capitals across America. But the Common Core problem must be solved at the federal level first, because that is where the strings are. So we're working diligently on that. Energy policy. America needs sensible, common sense, everyday energy reform and energy policy. This has been an impossibility under the Obama administration. For many years, we've stood for Keystone Pipeline. You know, it's been a personal project of mine. It's been something that we've gotten really close a couple of times. We're really close a couple of years ago, and there was a weekend that this love chain was formed literally around the White House. And I got a call from a friend who works in the oil and gas industry, and he says, Kathy, what do you think donor in the love chamber. And that donor got through the Obama administration, and the next thing we knew, the Keystone Pipeline was completed. We believe under the Trump administration, we're going to build the Keystone Pipeline. It is something that is needed. It is something that is practical common sense, everyday energy policy, and its day has passed. It is time to build that sucker and build it now. The same for domestic energy exploration and production. You know, the regulations that the Obama administration has put in place has stifled that industry, and it has stifled many of you at a state level. There's so many things you can be doing in terms of energy production that could just make your state economy and local economy boom. And you're not being allowed to do it because of over-regulation and over-government reach from the federal level. We're going to be doing a lot of deregulatory work. FreedomWorks is known for deregulation work. We see a great opportunity here to do a lot of that. We're of course going to continue our work against Obamacare. FreedomWorks was anti-Obamacare before its inception, when it was first started as a conversation piece. But one thing that I will say about Obamacare is we want Obamacare repealed. We do not want Obamacare replaced. So that is a real concern, and that is something that I would encourage each of you to be listening for and speaking to your congressmen and senators about, because there are a lot of Republicans who have on Capitol Hill who are saying, oh, but if we repeal Obamacare, what are we going to replace it with? Well, the answer to that is nothing. Absolutely. It is not the place of federal government to provide, to require that service to its American citizens. So that is another thing that you're going to see us working heavily on. Now those are just a few of the hundreds and hundreds of issues that we're going to be focusing on at the federal level. We have issues in most states across America as well for this upcoming session. Asset forfeiture, I mentioned, we are working on that at the federal level. We came pretty close last session on hearing our criminal justice reform package and having it heard in the House. In fact, it was interesting, Alan and I were on the road somewhere and got a call from our DC office, to generate activist activity on justice reform, to call leadership on Capitol Hill, because we had 24 hours to show that people want justice reform. And we did our part, and we turned it around, and activists across America were calling, emailing. We had a few who were visiting their congressional offices in the district, but it was not the time. We were simply not going to get justice reform last session, and it was not the Democrats who were holding it up. I'm supposed to say that, which I'll think about that. The same goes for many state capitals across America. It is typically not the Democrats who are holding up justice reform, even civil asset forfeiture reform. It is crucial that we get the point across that justice reform is not partisan. There's nothing partisan about it. Justice reform is liberty. Justice reform, in all of its facets, in all of its areas, is American reform. It's about freedom and liberty. It's even about free market, if you think about it in many cases. But it's turned into a very partisan thing, and that is extremely unfortunate. And even within the Republican Party, you have a faction who wants reform, and you have a faction who is just so afraid that they'll be seen as being crime that they're not really thinking about the end result. They're not thoroughly thinking about justice reform and what it is and what our current statutes are doing to American citizens. And I mean all facets, not just civil asset forfeiture. So you're going to see a lot of information coming pretty quickly that's going to be at the federal level and at the state level, since you're here in Texas, about justice reform. When you see those, I hope that you'll see that email as an action item. Read down to the bottom of the email, because very frequently there will be an action alert in there. What I mean by that is it will tell you what you can do. It will give you a very real-time needed thing. Please call your member of Congress and tell them that we support House Bill blah 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 for common sense justice reform. Those calls mean so very much. Emails are good. record with an email. All you got to do is send it to trash. So keep that in mind. A handwritten letter is what you should always send if you're sending something to Washington. Don't mail it to Washington, mail it to your local office, because it can take up to 7 weeks to reach your congressman if you mail it to Washington, D.C. You know, and that has been the case because of all of the riots and scares and things that we had a number of years ago. But there's just so much that you can do. You know, it will call you to action. I would encourage you right now, knowing that justice reform is going to be a hot issue. It's going to be hot at the federal level and hot at the state level. Please go right ahead. And at the state level, contact your representative and your senator about justice reform. Let them know there's a bill that's coming. It's going to be comprehensive. It's going to be thorough. It's going to have bipartisan support. FreedomWorks is a member of a very broad, extremely diverse network that supports criminal justice reform. You know, it is organizations like FreedomWorks and the Heritage Foundation and the ACLU. You know, what a wonderful opportunity to partner across the aisle with groups that we don't usually get to partner with. But what that shows is that justice reform truly is a nonpartisan thing. It's an American thing. So call your state senator, call your state representative, and go right ahead and either meet with or call your member of Congress, your congressman and your United States senator. I cannot stress how important it is to do this. If you don't do it before Christmas, please do it before your state legislative session begins on January the 10th and before members of Congress return after the Christmas recess. You know, your voice matters. I think it's easy to think, well, what does it matter? They're not paying any attention to me. They're going to do what they want to anyway. But it does matter. I mean, we know for a fact that very often people tally. People actually have their assistants taking notes for yes or no on bills based on the constituents that call and what they say. So your voice really does matter. And finally, if FreedomWorks can be of assistance to you in any way whatsoever, if it's something local going on, you know, we often get involved in local fights, you know, very often, very effectively. You know, I think government really does begin at home, and I particularly enjoy local issues. If there's something at a federal level you'd like to see us doing or not doing, if you have some feedback, please reach out to us and let us know, because the activists run FreedomWorks. We are truly an activist organization. Again, thank you for all you do, and for FreedomWorks, Merry Christmas.
All right, thank you, Kathy. And now, without any further ado, I'll go ahead and sit down and get out of everybody's way. We'd like to welcome our keynote speaker, Rev CL Bryant. He's going to speak to us, and I'm looking forward to this. Many of you may be familiar with his work. He did a documentary a couple of years back called Runaway Slave. This was an outstanding piece of work that he did and contributed to the conversation. And if you have not seen it, I recommend highly that you take a chance and take a look at it. He's got some other things coming up. I think he's going to talk about that a little bit. But without any further ado, CL, your floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kathy and Alan, my road companions that I travel many miles with. I crisscross this nation about once a month, every month. And I want to thank you, Scott, Delana, and my homegirl here, Tanya. She was born in Shreveport, Louisiana. That's where I'm from, for having us down here. I think you're doing a fantastic job. Yes, FreedomWorks is the largest grassroots politically motivated organization of its kind in America, 6 million strong, and we're glad to bring a message to the nation and certainly to a place here like Webster in Texas. Now, for the sake of time, I'm not going to be very long, but I'm going hopefully to be very persuasive in motivating you in what we need to do as far as our future is concerned. Now, there are consequences, as all of you know, to bad choices, regardless of if they're in your politics or your relationships personally, churches, what have you. There are consequences to bad choices. There's a storm coming in America right now, a storm that, of course, you being here on the Gulf Coast, you understand that either people evacuate or they ride the storm out. And when I'm looking here at this group of people, and when I look at grassroots organizations around the country, I'm looking at a group of people who decide to ride it out, decide to stay, decide to fight, decide to clean up whatever messes that might happen after the storm seemingly has passed. In our American politics today, when we look at the mess that the American landscape does in fact present to us in the wake of so many storms that have occurred in the last 8 years, I see you, and I want to thank each and every one of you for staying the course over those 8 years, because we have been called all types of names. We have suffered the slings and the arrows that the progressive left had to throw at us, and we have survived, even in the midst of them thinking that we would not. There are so many who had written us off and had written our obituaries and had talked about our demise over the last 8 years, from Eric Holder to Barack Obama, all the way to Susan Rice. Then Hillary Clinton was writing us off. Then we made a choice not to elect Mitt Romney. That's why we had the conversation of Hillary Clinton and now President Donald Trump. Whether we've made a good choice or not, that is yet to be seen. I chose him, and I want to give him a chance to do what we certainly hope he said he would do. And when we look at our history with people like Mitch McConnell, John Boehner, it is incumbent upon us, my friends, to understand that there is something we must do, and that we must make certain that the people that we send to Washington are people who will not abandon us. Because McConnell and Boehner, they betrayed us. They lied to us. We gave Boehner the gavel. We gave McConnell the leadership. And they lied to us. And so, yes, I'm excited about soon-to-be President-elect Trump, or President Trump, but I'm also very cautious. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And when we look at that scenario, my friends, there's a lot of things that we can say that we are to blame for. We're to blame for our children being indoctrinated the way they are in public schools. You go to a church and your pastor gets up and starts preaching heresy from the pulpit, you leave that church. Mm-hmm. Why do we send our children to public schools and let them stay there? Right. When the same types of heresies are being taught there. But you don't show up at your school board meetings. You don't show up at your city council meetings. So many times we are to blame for the things that are in fact affecting us in such a negative way. I'm reminded of a story in the book of Luke. It's a question that Jesus asked an impotent man. I think you'll find it in the 5th chapter of Luke, who had been by this pool of Bethesda for a long time, 38 years, as a matter of fact. And he asked him this question when he looked up on him, and he said, "You've been here 38 years. Why haven't you gotten well? Why hadn't you made your way to the pool?" He said, "There's nobody to help me." And then Jesus asked him this question: "Do you want to be made whole? Do you want to get well?" In America, let me tell you this. This is a question that we have to ask ourselves. And we have to be honest with ourselves about it, because the way our patterns indicate we have no desire to truly get well.
That's right.
Because we keep repeating the same type of foolishness over and over again. And this level of crazy that America has reached at this point in our history cannot be sustained. Serious people like you, joined with 6 million others across the nation, we have sent many messages to those people on Capitol Hill, and we're still sending those types of messages to people on Capitol Hill. But there is something that the progressive liberals have found out about us in the wake and in lieu of the idea that this is becoming a more and more codependent society on government. And folks, if you know anything about it, I've been in the pastoral ministry for over 35 years. I've counseled with many codependent people and codependent couples and codependent situations. There is sort of a sickness there. When you become absolutely dependent upon another person, you can't function without them. Government is becoming that person, that entity that we cannot seem to function without, and they want it to be that way. They want you to believe that you cannot exist without them. You're victimized in any other situation. And there's something that the progressive liberals have found out about the American psyche that's changing, that's evolving into something that is pliable in the progressive liberal hand. They've learned something that they are actually utilizing with our young people on college campuses, and our young people in our elementary schools and in secondary education, high schools. They've learned something about us that if, in fact, we don't right this ship, if we don't turn this around, we can, in fact, become mascots of government. There are people who tell us lies and go and occupy state houses, never intending, Kathy alluded to it, never intending to keep their promise. Elmer's was one of them in North Carolina. She lied to the people of North Carolina. And we're sick and tired of that type thing, but this is what they have learned. And I share it in my movie, Runaway Slave, about to make the next film, Red, White, and Black. And this is something I want you to consider. The progressive liberals have learned this, that once people become slaves, they don't necessarily seek freedom. They seek comfort. More food in the bowl, softer bed to lay on, a roof that doesn't leak, or an Obama phone. They seek the comforts. And government is saying, I can provide you those comforts. Let's soak the rich, make them pay. Let's actually cripple the greatest wealth-producing engine that the world has ever known. And friends, I believe that America is the greatest nation on the face of the earth. I believe that it is the greatest success story the world has ever known. And it is being crippled with the idea of progressive liberalism. How do you think that they get to a point, not only here in Texas, because it started really here in Texas, the challenge of same-sex bathrooms. How do you think they get that idea going in North Carolina? It's not something that they woke up one morning and said, hey, I know it would be a good idea to tell the American people. I know what they'll go for. They'll go for same-sex bathrooms. They'll go for same-sex marriage. They'll go for abortion on demand. They'll go for all of that. They just didn't wake up one morning and do that. How did we get to that point? I'll tell you how they got to that point. They got to that point by indoctrinating, brainwashing your children right under your nose. They send home to you a programmed child from the public school educational system. And how do they do it? Johnny, Susie comes in from school. How was your day? Oh, it's fine. And as long as they didn't get suspended, as long as they didn't get kicked out of school, as long as they didn't get into any fights where they lost teeth or anything of that nature, that's just fine. Good. go upstairs, wash your hands, get your homework, come down for dinner. But you never ask them, what did they talk to you about? What questions did they ask you? Because they are preparing now to greet a society of young people who are in fact prepared to receive a new world order.
Right.
And they're doing it right under our noses in schools that you pay for.
Right.
Friends, it is time for us to send a message loudly, clearly as the 6 million or 1.5 million that descended upon Washington, D.C. in 2009 that I had a privilege to talk to. It came to Washington. We told them as Tea Partiers and grassroots people, we told them that if in fact we allowed the policies of this Obama administration to go forward, we would wind up where we are today. And I am proud to say, even though we've gone over hills and valleys to get here, and even though we have been vilified by the progressive liberal media, we were right. We told them what would happen if those policies were to be put into place. So now is not the time to give up the fight, because yes, there is a storm coming. The slave does not seek freedom. The slave seeks comfort. And the slave does not necessarily know that he is a part of a culture. I'm reminded of a story in the book of Genesis. You remember the story of Lot and the angels that visited him as he sat in the gates of the city that night.
Right.
And he took them into his home. And before night fell, if you read that passage of scripture, the men, and then it said people from all quarters surrounded his house, demanding that he send those men out to him so that they could abuse them. Everybody showed up, it says, at Lot's house, but you know who didn't show up at Lot's house? The police.
That's right.
The city marshals, the sheriff, didn't show up at Lot's house to tell these people to go away and leave this man and his family alone. Do you know why? Because that type of behavior had become a part of the culture. And that is what is happening in America. That is what has happened in America. Where did that begin? As I begin to close here, I want to leave you with the genesis of this. 38 years that man sat by the pool of Bethesda. Let's go back 38 years in time here in America. 38 years ago, you had on television the genesis of what we are facing now with Black Lives Matter, Hands Up, Don't Shoot, and Occupy Wall Street. You had the genesis because you had shows on television like Good Times, Sanford and Son, Archie Bunker. They all seemed harmless. Even in the reruns, they seemed harmless. But what it allowed us to do and what it programmed us to do was to laugh at things that created stereotypes in the minds of young people that in fact are so concrete now that there are young people who have never seen segregation, who have never experienced true racism, in the streets talking about they need equal rights, equal protection. I have drank. I'm 60 years old. I have drank from segregated water fountains. I have ridden on the back of the bus in Shreveport, Louisiana, the last city, by the way, to concede defeat in the Civil War. I have been to Negro Day at the State Fair as a child growing up. The only day in the history, in the run of the State Fair, where a black person could go, a Negro as we were known as in those times, could actually go to the State Fair. And I always thought white folks controlled Negro Day or the weather because It always seemed to rain on Negro Day.
Oh.
But anyway, a bad rabbit trail. But just the same, my friends, what I'm saying is this. If anyone should be angry, it should be people who came out of that generation, who actually experienced racism. Tanya's mother has a very interesting history. We won't go into that right now. But I know a lot of the same people that she knows being born in the same city, growing up in the same city. But folks, there is an indoctrination that is going on. We laughed at Archie, but it made young black men even today think that every white man is Archie Bunker. And it made every white person think that every black kid should be like J.J. Evans. Or should be even if you're a successful man like George Jefferson was, you should be an angry, black, successful person. And the real evil and the real sad part about it is that black people have bought it themselves. Black people cannot understand that America is a place that finally we were able to be our individual selves. Yeah, sure, if I couldn't walk down to the end of the street or come into this restaurant and buy a sandwich for myself, yes, of course, I would still be very angry about that. And I should be. There was a time in America when that actually did exist, but not here in 2016. You cannot tell me that America is like it was back in the 60s. You cannot convince me of that America is like it was back then. It has truly, truly changed. So my friends, when I look at what was said to me, I was in DC just last week and then in Birmingham. Again, I travel a lot. It's with a group of preachers, room full of them. One of them said to me, when in hell has America been great for me? Taking a strike at my president, Donald Trump. I was a surrogate. I've interviewed him on several occasions, been with him on stage. You may have seen me, he and I together on Hannity, a good friend of mine, Sean Hannity. When in hell has America been great for me? I wish I had the normal hour that I had talked to you. I'd be happy to come back another time and share in detail about this, but I'll leave you with this. In front of you is the son, of course, of former slaves. You can see that very handily. You may not see the Scots-Irish that's in me as well, but the son, former slaves. My grandfather was an illiterate man. Great-grandfather was too. And if you wrote their names on the back of this wall, they would not have been able to read them, and so was my father until my mother taught him to read before he went off to World War II. My grandfather had fought in World War I. My great-grandfather fought in the Spanish-American War. They were proud Americans. The reason I bring that up is because my name is Cleon Lewis, but I go by CL because it reminds me of a tradition that's in my family. And it was really thumping really hard. Coming down that dirt road, I was playing Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, James Brown's. As I pulled up on the property, I could tell that Granddad was listening and he was looking. He was wondering, I guess, just what had happened to me. The old man cut pulpwood, and his pulpwood hands were real rough and hewn, almost like rock. As he got close enough to talk to me, I could tell he was incredibly upset. He looked me in my eyes and he said to me, Sonny, I didn't go through all that I went through so that you could be black. I went through all that I went through so that you could be free.
Here, here.
Free to go where I'll never go. free to do the things that I will never do. But above all, I went through what I went through so you could speak your mind. And so when we look at the greatest nation on the face of the earth, we must look at the children, all of us, of runaway slaves, because that runaway slave had to say to himself as he was trapped in that plantation system, I'm going to find freedom regardless of where it is. I don't even know what it is. I don't know if it exists for me being a slave, but I'm going to find it. And if I have to run away from here, if it costs me my life, I'll find it. And that's what that runaway slave did, and so it was with the Mayflower Pilgrims when they left the tyranny of King George. They didn't know if they'd ever make it across the Atlantic. They didn't know if they'd ever see these shores of the New World. But they said within themselves the same as any runaway slave, that whatever freedom is, wherever it is, and whatever it costs, even if it costs our lives, we're going to find it, or we'll die. That is the American spirit. And my friend, I say to you today, as we face this coming storm, political storm in America, that in the DNA of every true American is a thirst for liberty and freedom. And that must never go away. So I have to go and catch my plane now, but before I go, I need to ask you a question that has always been on my heart to ask gatherings like this wherever I find them. And it is a question that you must answer not only for yourselves, but it's a question that you must answer for your children, because in order to preserve and to create a more perfect union, we must keep in mind our posterity, those who come after us. And so, Webster, so Clear Lake, I ask you, are there any patriots left in Texas?
Hell yeah.
Is there anybody here who will stand up for God and country, who will stand up for the Republic? Then patriots, stand up. Stand up. Stand up. God bless you, and God keep you. God bless America.
Wow, talk about a hard act of follow, so I'll be brief. As Clear Lake Tea Party, we thank y'all for coming out there. We had some wonderful speakers today, a lot of information. CL was powerful. He was inspiring. You know, it's one of those things where it makes you glad that you're an activist, that you're standing up for what you believe in. This is great, folks. I invite anybody who lives here to come join with the Clear Lake Tea Party or any other group out here, Republican women, you name it. Be an activist, do something. Don't just come and hear, come and do. That's what we strive to do. So I thank you here. I thank the organizations that came out here today. TPPF, Texas Public Policy Forum, FreedomWorks, Empower Texans. We have people here from Raising Elvis Radio. You know, we've got lots of folks out here who have come out here to be a part of this. And it's these small gatherings. That's how it was in our founding. It wasn't big, massive rallies. Of course, there were some, but mainly it was folks getting together to talking about the issues of their day. That's what we're about, and that's what we're here in Clear Lake are striving to bring to you, is information through our lunch and learns, through our rallies, through our events. We invite you to come. We invite you to act. We invite you to save your country and to save Texas. Thank y'all very much.